All right, Jeremy Morgan, thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate the time. As we were talking before, we've done one of these episodes with Tom Scott at your organization prior. That was a phenomenal episode. Could probably record another 3, 4, 5 with him, but would love to get to know your side of home run franchises. And I know you're more so on the operational side. So why don't you give the audience just kind of a quick intro of yourself, what your background is, how you arrived at home run, and we'll go forward from there.
All right. Well, thanks there, Dibs. Hello, everybody. My name is Jeremy Morgan. I'm the COO of Home Run Franchises. We are an emerging franchise brand currently operating two different franchise brands, one in the custom closet space called Up Closets, and the other in the dryer vent servicing sector called Dryer Vent Superheroes.
Perfect. And so your background I know you're on the operational side, Jeremy, but your background in just the franchising world in general, have you always been operations? Have you ever owned franchises? You ever been a franchisor? What's all that look like in your history?
You bet. Well, I got started in the wild, wacky world of franchising back at the tender age of 20 when I had a lot more hair and a lot less belly with College Pro Painters. So I would imagine some of the audience may have heard of that brand, maybe even participated in it one level or another. But at about 21 years of age, I had to figure out a way to pay for my college education at the University of Nebraska. And I opened up the student newspaper and saw this thing about make a bunch of money in a summer running a painting business. And I thought, putting paint on wood, how hard could it be? Yeah. So I purchasing my first franchise of College Pro Painters and operated that business for 3 years while in school. And it enabled me to get a heck of a real world business education and pay for my college education in cash, which was great. And also pay for my first home. After that, after graduating, I moved on to the corporate side of College Pro Painters, which is owned by First Service Brands. And for about another 7 years, I worked on the corporate side of College Pro Painters, really learning how to lead and coach and develop other franchise owners. It was a tremendous education at that time. Since then, other aspects of franchising, I've worked with CertaPro Painters for a number of years, where I was in charge of their new franchisee development and growth, as far as developing new owners in their first few years, especially resale franchise owners who are purchasing an already operating business, and then moved over into their L&D departments, where I was in charge of overhauling and redeploying, rebranding of their new franchisee training programs for a number of years prior to joining Home Run.
Awesome. I'm curious what excited you to move back in those early days with College Pro. Said you ran it for 3 years and you moved over kind of the corporate side. What drew you to going from being in the trenches day to day over to the corporate side of the house?
You bet. At the time, it was really I looked at it as getting grad school for free. The College Pro organization was very much a incubator or developer of people. And even at the age of 23, 24 years old, I was at least smart enough to know that I didn't know that much. And getting that opportunity to go and be mentored by some great folks. I think of a big mentor of mine coming up in my career was by a fellow by the name of Brian Honeyman. He's actually the head of operations over at Handyman Connection, another franchise brand. But he was pretty impactful during my formative business years, and helping me learn how to be a great leader as well as a good business person.
Perfect. I think it's interesting perspective, because I'm not, as a new franchisor myself, starting Junk Raider, now we're going the franchise route. It's always my business partner and we're in a state of just knowledge capture, right? This whole world of franchising is brand new to us. We're learning a lot of new things and how folks engage. So it's interesting to hear that you've really been on both sides of the fence. You've been on the corporate side and you worked as a franchisee. What are some of the things that, if you talk to somebody like us, or even, younger guys that are maybe doing the same thing you did many years ago, whether they're looking to go to college or they're in college and they need supplemental income or what have you, what are some of the things that you would tell those folks just getting into the franchise world about either side of the fence? Like, hey, if you're going to go the franchisee route, be aware of this, or if you want to get in more on the corporate side, be aware of this.
Great question. I'll go to the franchisee side first. The best advice I have for any person looking to start a franchise, start really any business venture, is first and foremost, be humble.
Yeah.
You've been wildly successful in past lives and doing other roles and things of that nature.
Yeah.
But be humble in going into it, assuming you know nothing. Be a sponge.
Mm-hmm.
And for at least the first, I'm going to say probably 2 years, just follow the program, follow the recipe, and absorb.
Yeah.
There will be plenty of time to innovate and create and add on to the system. But it is important that, especially those first 24 months, that you just gain the foundational knowledge and experience and build in the muscle memory and repetitions associated with those first 2 years, especially in like service businesses or any
Yeah.
business that may have some seasonality or kind of repetition to it. I think that is critically important. So just be humble, hold back all the innovation until you've built up that, I'd say 24 months generally of experience. I was going to say that kind of ties into my advice for most franchisors. Um, the most critical time in any new business, life cycle, if you will, is really those first 24 months. Malcolm Gladwell talks about it takes 10,000 hours of doing something before you gain mastery over it.
Mm-hmm.
That's no different for any franchisee. And I mean, most franchisees are purchasing a business that they don't necessarily have a tremendous amount of background in many
Yeah.
cases. And so, being mindful of that, making sure that you are being detail oriented, proactive, and really thinking through that first 24 months of any new owner's experience,
Yeah.
in developing the systems, the onboarding, the training, ongoing support that you can be deploying within those first 24 months, because that is going to be the thing that girds up and supports that franchisee while they're earning their first 10,000 hours of experience and gaining their mastery.
Right.
And so, don't sell a franchise until you've got that first 24 months figured out for that folks. So when somebody entrusts you with their life savings to buy one of your businesses, you're giving them the best possible chance of succeeding.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff. So I'm curious. So, I mentioned we chatted with Tom Scott, who's the owner of Home Run Franchises. And obviously, if you ask him this question, what are the challenges that he's going through day to day with running the business, scaling the business, and you'll get probably a different answer from him than we will maybe you, who's in the operational side. So for you in your role, Jeremy, what are the challenges that you are dealing with day in and day out from a business perspective with Home Run?
Well, we're an emerging brand. So, I was tasked, I'm fairly new to the team. I've only been here for about 3 months. And so I am in the thick and in the midst of developing all of that stuff that goes to those first 24 months we just talked about. And so, I'm in that season of development, creating and putting together processes, procedures, programs, support, all that kind of good stuff. And then how do we codify that and then find the right people to join our team to then execute that kind of stuff. And in an emerging brand, it's really about putting those kind of tools in place and then going and finding the right people that have a heart for entrepreneurs and new business owners, and who are natural coaches and leaders at heart to then execute that playbook with those folks and making sure that they're guiding them, shepherding them through that first 24 months and then beyond.
And everything that you're doing, Jeremy, on a day-to-day basis in terms of what you just mentioned, from your previous roles, do you have a lot of, obviously the experience transfers over, but do you have like past like things like collateral, process docs, org charts and stuff that easily transfer into what you guys are doing in the specific home service lines of business that you've got going on that you can bring into it? Or are you basically creating everything anew just from your experience up top?
Well, in my career, I've pretty much honed into the services franchise aspect of things. Although I would imagine in like, quick service restaurants or, other areas and different stuff like that, between the various brands and similar type businesses, the processes tend to be the same. So what I've been able to do is I've been able to, being in home services for so many years, I have just a lot of tribal knowledge that I've retained over the years and
Yeah.
processes, identifying some of the things that work so pretty good, and then some of the things that weren't so great to avoid those things. So I'm leveraging that past experience and those wins and setbacks as I'm developing this stuff. But especially in the home services business, as much as the widget may be different that is being provided in
Yeah.
home service as a category operates. There's some definite principles and practices that are you know
Yeah.
across the gambit in the home services world.
That makes sense. So, in terms of your growth, the home run franchises forecasted growth. And I know talking with Tom, a lot of it is organic. Most of it's organic, right? Do it in house. If you want to partner with what they call an FSO today, or any of the brokerage firms, like his suggestion was take kind of a strategic approach to that. Maybe don't go after that early on, build it first for maybe 6-12 months or even beyond. But when you are ready and have the infrastructure to maybe do that hockey stick growth, maybe then you go and partner and really, start to bring on 50 to 100 units per year. Can you talk a little bit about just the model at Home Run of organic growth and how you fit into that with your role, Jeremy, there in terms of lead gen for franchisees, where you guys go to find the good candidates, how you nurture them through a process? And I mean, I don't know if you're involved in that at all, Jeremy. I'm sure you probably are to some degree, but if you could touch on that growth, it'd be great.
Well, I mean, the good news is I'm kind of running the business. After we get the franchisees, Tom
Yeah.
is my partner in crime, who is, I often joke and says he catches them, I clean them and fry them. As far as franchisees go,
Yeah.
and with all due love and respect for our franchisees, they're awesome folks. But the idea is this: I get involved in that process, thinking in terms of, okay, strategically, when do we have entry points in the business? When our training program sets our particular way that we set it up is we have 6 training waves per year, or 6 entry points into our business due to the way we execute our training schedule that goes over a couple of months. With various interactions with those folks, and we want to make sure that we're so I'm supporting them in an ongoing fashion. So what I do is I work with Thomas to we identify when the cutoff points for each wave is. We've put together a program so he can then promote that to the candidates, so they can get a sense of, okay, if I take the lead, if I buy this thing, how the heck are they actually going to teach me to do something that I may have never done before?
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff. And then I also work with candidates once they get a little ways through the process, where I'll be doing an interview with them, answering questions about the training, ongoing operations, and support, as well as getting an evaluative look at candidates. Are they a right fit for our culture?
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned training, because with something like Up Closets, and Tom talked a little bit about this, certainly Dryer Vent Superheroes, really any of those home-based businesses that take a level of skill, I can
Mm-hmm.
certainly see how a built-out process and training program would very much so help somebody, even if they came into your business already somewhat of a handyman in that space. Having a built-out process to follow will be super helpful. On my side, in the junk removal space, it doesn't necessarily take as much technical skill to do what we do, right? You're going and you're picking up items and throwing them in the truck, but there's definitely still a process to follow, right? It's much more about the customer experience, and outside of the laborious nature of junk removal, you're getting out there, getting your hands dirty. You've got to be able to lift 50 pounds or more sometimes, right? It's really about coaching guys and girls on what our brand means to us and how we want you to represent that in the field. And I'm sure you guys put a huge premium in that, but you've almost got that technical aspect of training that you have to do as well. Like, we teach folks, proper ways to lift things and how do you uniquely position the stuff in a truck so that you can max out the truck as much as possible. So there's that element to it, but the job itself is very basic. Take stuff and put it in a truck. With your business, it seems like there's a little bit more of a technical component to it, which I think is interesting.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I mean, our trainings for, I'll use closets, for example. I think our dryer vent is a little bit more closely aligned with the junk removal piece that you talk about. It's more of somewhat of a price-driven, value-driven, how fast can you get there, service,
Yeah.
lower ticket type of item. convenience type of thing. But for
Yeah.
closets, this is more of this is a bigger ticket item. There's customization to each customer and stuff like that. But regardless of our two other brands, but for closets especially, we have approximately, our new owners will come on board and go through almost right around 100 hours of training and development,
Mm-hmm.
spanned over a number of weeks.
Yeah.
Some of it's software related, technical related. Some of it's just learning how to put the units together and do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But in truth and reality, that's only about, the install aspect and the technical hands-on aspect, maybe about a quarter to a third of the training.
Interesting. Okay.
The software and the business day operations, that's about another third. But then another third is process focused on the thing you just talked about, which is that customer experience.
Yeah.
And within our brands, our real focus is not just creating a transaction that creates revenue, but how do we build processes and programs that have a proactive solution to a customer's need that they didn't even quite realize they had yet until they get there. And that's where value lives. And that takes things from developing a transactional relationship between a service provider or franchise service provider and their homeowner or their customer to building a customer for life.
Yeah. There's certainly an art to it. And what's difficult is, us as more on the business ownership side, and obviously you as well, because you've been a franchisee and you've owned the business. But when you start to bring in folks underneath you, maybe field techs, folks that are actually getting their hands dirty, doing a lot of the work, there's so much importance in having them represent your brand well, but also be able to think outside the box. And so I know that for business owners, and I don't want to call it butting heads because it shouldn't be that, but trying to get what I have up here into the hands and the brains of my guys in the field and how to strategically work with a customer on objections, or not necessarily how to upsell, but like if you can identify another need or a problem they have and we can help, we certainly want you doing that. And of course, all of this kind of the ancillary stuff of, showing up clean cut, uniform, being able to present well to the client, talking through our process, like all of that stuff is incredibly important.
To that point, I think that's where it comes into the idea of building processes and programs in place, and then training and drilling on them and practicing with the folks in the field. I mean, and it's not lost on me that I'm a parent. I've got kids, and if I set a standard for here's a clean room, my kids will always clean it about 75% of it, and it's good enough, right?
Yeah.
Well, our folks in the field, who are the ones who are spending all the time with our customers,
right?
That same thing applies. So as we build these processes, a couple of things need to happen to shrink that gap between our intended execution and where it actually lies. One is setting standards above, so if they're going to fall down, it's still in the place where we want it. But then also really focusing on training our folks in the field on the why we do what we do. We're not having you do these extra steps to create extra busy work that that keeps you away from your families, or lowers your dollars per hour. No, that's not the why. But when they understand that, hey, when I do these things, it positively impacts the customer, which then gets them to talk to their neighbors about our good or service.
Yeah,
that creates more jobs for you. That keeps you working, keeps you busy, and or help increase the size of our interactions with clients.
Yeah.
And once they get the why, what they do tends to be a lot more effective because they're bought in.
Yeah.
And I think that comes down to the idea of that training, coaching, spending time with folks in the field, helping them understand that why.
Well, you're touching on a lot of stuff that surrounds culture, Jeremy, which is awesome, because if you have the right culture, a lot of what you're talking about, like, the technicians are in the field every day, all day. They're the ones in the trenches. You may still, as a business owner in certain businesses, maybe you're still fielding a phone call from a client and so you get that kind of day-to-day interaction, but you're not in front of clients unless you make a concerted effort to go out. So you really are putting a lot of faith and trust in the field teams and the people you hire to go out and do the work, to not only be a great face in front of the client, represent your brand well, but also have enough trust and understanding from the top-down management that they're working for, that, hey, we want the positive and negative feedback as well that you get in the field from customers, because we can only be as good as what that feedback is, and if we take action on it as a business owner. So if you've got a lot of techs in the field that are getting feedback from customers, again, positive or negative, but they're not feeding it back to management or feeding it back to the C-suite, if you will, of folks. Like if Tom, Scott, and you guys never hear about the complaints that customers have on the last closet job you did, or the positives, the great stuff that you guys are doing, it doesn't allow you to implement change in the business that would positively impact those technicians at some point down the line. So, building great culture, not to go off on a tangent or make that a sub subject is incredibly important. Here's an interesting question for you, Jeremy, and you can be as candid or not candid about it. I don't mean it to come off this way, but I'm going to just say it. You take it however you want. But what are some examples of conflicts that maybe you and Tom, as sitting at the top of the organization, where do you guys maybe butt heads day to day on ideas and how you should grow the business? Are there anything, kind of on a surface level that comes to mind that doesn't give us too far of a look under the hood that maybe exposes your business at all? I think it's just an interesting question.
Well, I'm 6'4". Tom's not that. So I mean, most of our our conflicts are. I just say we'll sell it by.
Yeah.
No. But no, I mean, the good thing about working with closely with a business partner like with like Thomas or any of the folks on my team is this: you're gonna have a conflict, but they only occur on days ending in Y.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of the process, and I think it's important that people have a healthy view of conflict. I'm a firm believer that relationships are actually built in conflict.
Mm-hmm.
But conflict isn't a dirty word. It's actually a pretty positive one. Conflict is just learning how to resolve a question.
Yeah.
Or setting good expectations or setting proper boundaries with another individual so you can have a mutually positive experience. So, do Tom and I have butt heads and stuff? Sure. And some of it's kind of personality driven. Tom is an aggressive sales guy, no fear, goes forward. I tend to be a bit more process oriented. I always have to set good expectations with him. Say, hey, Tom, you're going to come up with an idea.
Yeah.
I don't want you to perceive what I'm going to say next as arguing with you, shooting it down, poo-pooing it.
Yeah.
But here's what I'm trying to do. You give me a great idea. I'm going to take hold of it, put it here in my head, and I want to try to think of the 110 different ways I can break it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then fix it in my head to make sure it's shored up so that great idea can succeed.
Yeah.
So just even like that is a good example of a conversation that he and I will have from time to time where I just, again, setting expectations, because if I don't provide that context,
mm-hmm.
it might be perceived as I'm blocking everything or I'm not bought into what it is we're doing.
Yeah.
Versus, I like the idea. Let's try to break it, fix it, make it the best it can be, then set it on its way.
Yeah.
And, so I have to give a little as far as, being open to possibilities at times and, thinking that through. Tom, on his side has to, be open to like pumping the brakes and providing that time and space to re-engineer to make it as sound an opportunity as possible. But I think, as long as you're people of goodwill who are being open and speaking about that kind of stuff with one another, not having any kind of withheld agendas, and most importantly, not putting the story that we have in our head on the other person and assuming we know what they think or where they're at.
Yeah.
I think those are things that help, breed a healthy culture, healthy conflicts. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, at the end of the day, even if Tom and I aren't agreeing on something, we both have to remind ourselves it's not me versus him.
Right.
It's us versus the problem.
Yeah, totally. It's funny. Yeah, it's interesting to hear you kind of talk through that, because I'm sitting here thinking, I'm a lot like Jeremy, and Ted's a lot like Tom on my side of the fence. So I am very much so process oriented for sure, but much more risk averse, right? So we definitely want to take a deeper look at something before we pull a trigger, even if it doesn't have anything to do with money. Maybe it's a time commitment. Much more analytical in that sense. I get where you're coming from there. And to the point about conflict, I would be concerned if somebody says, "Oh, we don't have any conflicts internally." Right? That means you're probably not growing. You're probably not challenging each other, because we're all uniquely built humans and individuals. So even if you're really like somebody, you should always still have probably differing opinions, at least on some things, and you should have a good enough culture, back to culture, and trust to bring it up in a form, in a professional manner, that it's received well, and it comes back with some good dialogue that ultimately produces the action item and the next step that's positive for everybody, the organization in whole. So good stuff there, Jeremy. So last question here, and we'll wrap it up. We always like to ask, if you could go back to your younger days, whenever that was, coming out of school 5 years ago, transitioning from one business to the next, whatever it was, and just tell yourself, or maybe do something differently, what would you, Jeremy Morgan, have done differently?
How far back are we going here?
You could go as far back out of the womb, out of
I
school.
would have bought Google in '94 if it was.
There you go. Not a bad idea.
It's a good question. I'm going to go back to starting a career.
Mm-hmm.
And the advice I would have given my younger self at that time is focus on learning and development,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff, and hold on to those lessons. I mean, I've been fortunate. I've had good mentors who've said that to me all the way along, and it's borne out to be true. The other piece would be this: be thankful for your challenges.
Mm.
It seems like with time and space in my career, and I can now have some road to look back on. I can look at different transition points or different seasons in life and in business life and stuff like that were hard. Times that I failed, times that I felt like a failure. Times of real struggle and not knowing what to do. And being able now to reflect on those things, those are wonderful periods of growth and development. They gave me, tools now that I have in my toolbox that I use today.
Mm-hmm.
And so having that, if as best as you're able to, while in the moment, be grateful for the bull crap that comes your way.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny how those situations, those seasons of life are actually equipping you for what's coming next.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
And so it causes you to have that attitude of gratitude, even when it may not necessarily be as easy to be that way. And if you can maintain that perspective, I think it will help you focus as an individual on what can I learn from this particular time and season of life, as opposed to just focusing on the misery of it.
Yeah. And
then how can you leverage that and use that to, hopefully benefit somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's in a lot of great points throughout the episode, but especially that. It's hopefully for the folks listening, take a lot of good info from that and values. So, well, Jeremy, we'll wrap it up with that. We appreciate the time. If you want to be found, what's the best way for folks to find you? Is it LinkedIn, email? How do they reach out to you?
Well, I appreciate you offering the best ways to find me are this. Probably my LinkedIn profile. If you go to LinkedIn, so linkedin.com/n/Jeremy N. Morgan, you can certainly message me there. You can also email me at jeremy@homerunfranchises.com. Certainly would welcome any connections.
Perfect.
From any of the audience.
Well, I hope folks do reach out to your wealth of knowledge, and we appreciate the time today. We'll end it with that. But again, best of luck to you in Home Run Franchises, and Tom as well. On the outset, looks amazing, and love what you guys are doing. So I'm encouraged and excited to follow you guys and see where it goes. So thank you.
We're certainly having a ton of fun doing that, and I think we're building something special, and we're really focused on making sure that the folks that join our team win. That's what we're primarily focused on, making sure our franchisees win.
Absolutely. Thanks again.
Thank you.